How's it going, everyone? It's Ollie from Marcel 1000. Today is January 3rd, 2020, and today we're going to take a look at the potential major northeast snowstorm that could happen this week. And also, we'll talk about the multiple snowstorms that are expected to come off the Pacific Northwest coming into this week. Well, before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content from me. But let's begin by first taking a look at the GFS computer model. So this storm is going to happen very, very soon from the Northeast, as soon, pretty much less than 24 hours from now. If we take a look just slightly back or to around 18, you already see a lot of snow begins in right around the Great Lakes region, and it's even beginning now further westward to around the Chicago area, where you're receiving moderate snow, and this extends to Indiana and Ohio. So this is already beginning. We're already very well in the mix when it comes to snow throughout the Great Lakes region, and later on it will approach the Northeast. Let's take a look at the current timing of this. It's around 5 a.m. when I'm recording this. Let me show you guys how it'll look like when around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and you see the snow is pretty much already extended all throughout Pennsylvania. It's extending the Northeast, and you see some some of the bigger snow swaths approach the interior Northeast at this point. If we move on a little further, though, it gets much, much worse as we begin to see a lot more. We begin to see a lot more condensation. We begin to see a lot more of that unstable air really take over in the Northeast, where we're going to see more convection, as a result more snow, and this snow will extend very far south to near the New York City metropolitan area. At this point, no accumulation is expected in New York City. However, there could be some slick spots of travel right around in and around New York City, so watch out. Even if there isn't much accumulation at all in New York City, you want to watch out for some slick conditions and maybe some reduced visibility thanks to this heavier snowfall, because by around Sunday night it should be the worst for you guys right around the New York City metropolitan area, and then the snow will extend even further to New England going into late Sunday into early Monday, where we begin to see that snow throughout the interior Northeast and New England, although it's lighter, thankfully, since there isn't as much convection when we're further down at night. However, the storm will go offshore for now. I would say right around Monday afternoon, to where the low pressure will just be far enough off the coast to not bring any major impacts in terms of snow right around New England. However, that could change, and it's the reason why I'm saying there's a possibility that we could see a major snowstorm out of this if all the right conditions play out, if all the right weather patterns play out over the next week. We just have to wait and see. However, the certainty that we're gonna see even more snow around eastern New England, I would say, is more likely than not at this point, even if the worst case scenario occurs at this point. So keep that in mind. And looking at the GFS model, you see it's pretty much saying the exact same thing as the Futurecast. However, what the Futurecast radar doesn't show is what happens ahead of 3 days. So let's move on to beyond 72 hours, where things begin to get interesting, because the GFS model really begins to strengthen this storm right around the 3-day mark. And while it's currently well off the shore of most of New England, you see that it's growing stronger. You see the snow begin in Maine, and this should continue for several days. And like us keeps emphasizing in prior videos, the storm is going to move slowly as a result of sort of a negatively tilted jet stream, where we're going to see jet stream winds face to the west rather than the east like it should. So it's expected to take this weird turn closer to the coast a little bit and just meander around for a little bit, since the jet stream winds to the west will be to the east will be very, very weak as a result of this negatively tilted jet stream, where a big ridge over eastern Canada is going to try to force this storm closer to the coast, while the jet stream is trying to pretty much steer this out to sea. And since we're seeing pretty much those two winds fight against each other, it's gonna create a very weak steering current pattern over this storm, which means it's gonna meander a lot. It's gonna move very slowly, and this is important because I notice usually with slow moving systems like this and with storm systems that have weak steering patterns, that means that I mean weak steering flows. That means that it's more typical that these types of storms are more uncertain because the computer models aren't very used to having with storms that have weak steering currents, since obviously there isn't a lot of times where we see a scenario like this during the winter. It's not every day you see that, and computer models pretty much make their forecast based off of historical data. And when we're having a relatively rare scenario like this where we're seeing a negatively tilted jet stream and a weak steering flow in this sort of position, there isn't a lot of data that the computer models could look back on to make a at as much of a reliable forecast over especially when we're talking beyond 3 days from now. So I want to say there's still a lot of uncertainty with this. So just because throughout most of New England you aren't under the snow based off the GFS and European model, I want to emphasize that a lot could change because it's not only that the computer models are forecasting this beyond 3 days, it's also that it's trying to forecast a somewhat atypical scenario over New England, which gets more uncertain when we're talking about a scenario like this where there's a negatively tilted jet stream. So I want you guys to stay tuned to any updates in the computer models, because again, it could change drastically to a point where you could receive much more snow all throughout New England. And it's definitely going to be key to keep watching these computer models over the next several days, because any small differences can make a huge difference in your forecast. So you might be asking what would need to be different in the forecast to allow this storm to get closer to the coast, or maybe even further than what's already forecast. Well, it really all depends on where this negatively tilted jet stream forms, because I noticed over the past several runs, both the GFS and the European model, been now leaning more towards that negatively tilted jet stream to stay more northeastward, just far enough northeastward to the point where the low pressure will mainly stay far enough off the coast to bring any sort of major snowfall threat to many more people in New England. So let me show you guys this by taking a look at the 500 millibar MSLP, and you see that pretty much here's the jet stream right between, I would say, the greens and the blues right here, while between dark green and the light green right here. You see that jet stream is steering sort of in this direction, but you see a big bump right here, and typically the jet stream is typically supposed to go sort of in this direction. However, since there's a ridge building in eastern Canada, we're seeing a little bit of a bump in the jet stream and a little bit of that negative tilt I was talking about, where the jet stream is sort of shifting its winds temporarily more towards east westward direction, to the point where it will affect this storm and steer it closer to the coast. However, in the later runs, the GFS and the European models have been favoring that negatively tilted jet stream to be more up northeastward. So it won't really be close enough to, in this scenario, it won't be close enough to New England to bring a widespread major snowfall threat for a lot of New England, since it's expected to take the turn closer to the coast a little bit too late and a little bit too far north to bring any sort of, like I said, a widespread major snowfall impact in New England. However, we're still like 3 days out, and I feel like there's still a lot of time to iron out the forecast. And I could definitely see a scenario where this ridge it builds up a little bit further westward, southwestward, and it brings more of that negatively tilted jet stream closer to New England, to the point where the low pressure will be closer to coast, much closer in New England than, let's say, Eastern Canada, to the point where it could be much more of a major snowfall threat for you guys. However, for now, the good news is that both the European and GFS model are taking are leaning towards bringing more of that negatively tilted jet stream well further up northeastward, to the point where even if it does move further westward, it's going to be way too far up north to have much of an impact on New England to bring a major snowfall there, because you see that the low pressure doesn't move westward until the around 5 days from now, when it's well far up north from New England. But however, like I said, if that ridge builds a little bit sooner, if that ridge builds a little bit more westward, then that means that the low pressure is more likely to steer closer to the coast, right around New England, to bring much more major impacts. However, for now, it seems like Eastern Canada should definitely be watching this as of right now, since it's at this point, it could easily change. At this point, it's most likely that you guys will experience the worst from this low pressure system. So we just have to keep that in mind. And in terms of the total snowfall forecast expected for New England at this point, so this is a snowfall forecast I made as of today, January 3rd, and you see that, compare that to my forecast yesterday, you see that I'm predicting a lot less snow, for the most generally speaking, throughout New England and the interior Northeast. And the reason why is because obviously the shifts in the computer model forecast, since the computer models are now leaning towards more of this storm taking more of a westward track, more further northeastward. That means that I'm expecting less impacts and less snow right around New England to than yesterday, where it was taking this low pressure system closer westward to the coast than today's run. However, I'm still expecting a decent amount of snow, even with the shifts in the forecast, with up to a foot expected in Maine and portions of the interior Northeast, like the upstate New York area, and a good area of 1 to 3 throughout the more populated sectors, like maybe Boston could be involved, Hartford, northwestern New Jersey, and just northwest of Philadelphia. Expect 1 to 3 inches of snow, and this extends to Pittsburgh as well, where you could experience some snow, and then a broad area of 3 to 6. So for a lot of people, even with the shifts in the forecast bringing less snow throughout New England and Northeast, this would still be a major snowstorm for a lot of you guys. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, because this could definitely be major. And like I said, just stay tuned to the forecast, because any shifts in the scenarios can make a big difference in the forecast. Now, let's take a look at the Northwest Pacific, because there's going to be a lot of snowstorms coming off the Northwest Pacific, thanks to a weakness in this ridge, where a lot of storms are going to move further southeastward and move onto the coast, since there's going to be very weak ridging. So expect a lot of snow in the higher elevations of the Northwest Pacific, and this extends through several days, like 5 days. You're going to see consecutive snowstorms and rainstorms throughout the Northwest Pacific. So I want you guys to keep that in mind headed into the future. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and I hope you guys have a good day, good night, good morning, whenever you're watching this.